Hi, my name is Scott DeLuzio, and I'm going to show you 3 tools for automated testing of local WordPress installs. The 3 tools that we're going to talk about today are, first one is Desktop Server. It's run by or developed by a company called WordPress, and it basically allows you to create WordPress websites locally on your own computer without exposing them to the world. Kind of a good development practice to do that. A lot of developers use tools like Desktop Server, and there's a reason why I'm specifically using Desktop Server. Well, first off, it's the one that I've been using for a number of years. I really enjoy it, but also they have integration with another tool that we'll be using. I'll get to that in just a minute. The next tool that we're going to use is called Ghost Inspector, and as their website tells you, it makes automated testing of anything really on your website really easy. It's a great tool. Lets you record different steps on your site, whether it's logging into a site or going through a checkout process or completing a form or anything like that. It lets you go through any of those steps, record those steps, and then later on you can tell it to run those steps for you and go through that in a kind of automated fashion, so that way you're not spending your time going through and testing these things manually. And so it does a lot of this testing stuff all on its own. And then the third tool that we're going to use is called Ngrok. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's kind of a funky name here. But basically what this does is it allows you to take your locally hosted website, which ordinarily would not be available to anyone else in the world, and it exposes that site kind of to the public. So the reason why I want to use this is because I already have my development environment on my computer. I don't want to have to go set up separate websites for every single plugin that I develop or every single website that I'm trying to test out. I want to have my local development environment stay the way it is. I don't really want to change any of that. The problem is Ghost Inspector needs to be able to access the website that it is going to test against in order for it to run its tests. So that's where this Ngrok comes in. It basically allows you to open up your locally developed sites to the internet using a kind of random URL that you can kind of see in their screenshot here on their website. So not only does a local host environment, not only is that what I already use, it's a good development practice to develop locally, or at least not on a live website that you're relying on for, maybe it's an e-commerce site, you're relying on it for your income coming through customer orders or whatever. And the other thing is whenever there's an update to the software on your site, so if you're running a WordPress site, if you have WordPress updates or plugin updates or theme updates, things like that, you want to be able to test those things to make sure that those things actually are going to work the way they're expected to work after you click that update button. So having a locally hosted version of your site will help you to test to make sure that those changes aren't going to break everything when you actually click update on the live site. So it's good to just be sure that all the stuff on your site is working before you go live. So I'm not going to go through the process of showing you how to install all of these different things. Desktop Server is fairly straightforward. They have lots of tutorials on their website on how to install that. Ghost Inspector doesn't actually need anything to install. You just need an account on their site, and they do have a free account, and so does Desktop Server as well. All of these do have paid options, and Ngrok also does have a free option to get started with too. Obviously with free they're somewhat limited, but you can do it all for free, and it won't really hinder you too much with what I'm about to show you. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Desktop Server, and the reason why I like using Desktop Server is it has an integration with the Ngrok service here. So once you have desktop server installed, you want to make sure when you're starting up your server that you have Ngrok integration activated, and also the DSCLI integration activated as well. I've already started that, so I'm going to go back over to my development site here, and all you have to do to start Ngrok is just click the Start button, and you'll see a browser window will open up, and also you'll get a window here that opens up. This shows you the forwarding address that is created by Ngrok. So this one here will point to this website that I had already set up. So if I go on this page that opened up, I can click on this link. I'm just going to open it in a new tab, and this will be my site that's hosted locally on my own computer. Now I can send this link to anybody in the world. They can put it in their browser and they'll be able to see this site on my computer, which is great. You know, if you're developing a client site or something like that, you may want to share this. And if it's developed locally without a service like Ngrok, you would not have the ability to share that other than taking screenshots or things like that to your client. So this is another good benefit of using something like this. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to test a plugin that I developed to make sure that it works the way I want it to work. Right now I have a stable version on this local development site, and I want to walk through the steps and tell Ghost Inspector what needs to happen in order for a successful test to be run. The reason why that's important is I want it to go through the steps and do what I'm expecting it to do, and then as time goes on and I develop this plugin and I make more features to the plugin, or I fix bugs or change things around, whatever I end up doing to the plugin, I want to make sure that the core functionality, the things it's supposed to do, I want to make sure it all just still works. But the problem is there's lots and lots of functionality that goes into a plugin like this. A lot of functionality that goes into really any kind of plugin that you might be developing. And so you want to make sure that the core features of the plugin are not going to be broken in a future update. But I also don't want to spend all day testing every single step through the whole process. So I want to use a service like Ghost Inspector that's going to do the testing for me. So what I'm going to do is I've already created some sample fields here that I want to use in my test, and I'm going to go to the Ngrok version of my site using this URL, and I'm going to walk through the steps that I would need to do in order to have a simple product show up in my cart. But I need to be able to record this. So Ghost Inspector actually has a Chrome browser add-on. I'm sure they have one for other browsers as well, Firefox and whatever. But I'm going to click on Ghost Inspector, and I'm going to tell it to create a new test. And then I'm going to say Start Recording. Okay, so now it's recording basically everything that I do. So what I want to have happen is I want to go find the sunglasses product on my site here. So I'm going to go search sunglasses. Okay, and it's going to pull up sunglasses. And I'm going to add sunglasses to my cart. I'm going to click View Cart. I'm going to click Proceed to Checkout. Okay, so now I'm on my checkout page, and what I did in my conditional fields plugin is I set it to display a field called Simple Product Test on the checkout page if there's sunglasses in the cart, which there is, and that shows up. Okay, so what I want to make sure is that Ghost Inspector knows to check for that field. So I'm going to do something called making an assertion. I'm going to click on the Ghost Inspector icon in my toolbar here. I'm going to click Make Assertion. And so now I can go down to Simple Product Test here. Click that, and it says Assertion is recorded. So basically I'm just making sure that that field is going to exist somewhere on my checkout page here. So now I'm going to go back to recording the operations, and I'm going to click in the name field. I'm going to start filling out my checkout page. And again, this is just a locally hosted site, so this order isn't really going to be going anywhere. I don't even have actual payment methods on here. I just have the cash on delivery type of thing, so it's good for testing this type of stuff locally. But if you did have a live e-commerce site and you might want to test a payment gateway, whether it's Stripe or PayPal or whatever, those usually do come with some sort of test keys that you can use, and then when there's a credit card form, you can fill it in with their test credit card numbers. Stripe, I know, uses like 42424242 all the way, for 16 digits, and you can use that as a credit card number. For now, I'm just going to use cash on delivery because I just want to basically test to make sure that this checkout process works the way I intend it to. So click cash on delivery, and I'm going to click place order. Now, accurately, I have an error message here that says please complete the field number 1, which is here because I didn't actually fill out this field. And that's good because one of the things that I want to test for is that the required field is actually filled in. So now I'm going to click Ghost Inspector and make another assertion and make sure that this shows up as well. So then I'm going to go back to record, and now I'm going to complete this with some information, and then I'm going to click place order again, and it should bring me to an order confirmation screen, which it does, and we should see the simple product tests that we have and the field 1 test that I filled in. So I want to make another assertion to make sure that that information shows up on the order confirmation page as well. Okay, so now I'm done recording, so I'm going to click Finish Recording. And I'm going to save this test run, and then view my test. Okay, so now it's running the test, and it's going to run through and see, is it able to complete the test again on its own, making sure that it basically recorded all of the steps that I asked it to do correctly. So we'll just give this a couple minutes here to run through. Okay, and it looks like the test has actually failed. And this could happen for a number of reasons, but let's go down. It says it's failed on step number 14, so we're going to jump down to that. And it says that the select billing state result, the element was not found. The reason probably for that is that we have the wrong selector here. So this is probably something that just doesn't exist. So I'm going to click here, click Edit, and I'm going to change this because I already know what this is supposed to be. This is just supposed to be billing state. I'm going to assign it. I'm going to tell it to assign a value of AZ to that. So basically it's going to select Arizona for that. Now, as I'm going through here, I'm noticing that it actually added some extra steps that I don't really need it to do. So I don't really care that it clicks on billing postcode into that field. I just care that it assigns a postcode value to that field. So I'm going to delete this click step in here. And then I'm going to save changes. I'm going to run the test again. Again, give it another minute to run through, and then we'll see what the results are. Alright, great. So this time it looks like the test has passed. It's gone through all of the steps that I configured in here and made sure that it ran through and did everything correctly. Now the cool thing about Ghost Inspector is it actually records a video of the tests that it does. And so I can watch this video and see exactly what Ghost Inspector is doing. Now, as you can see here, it's going way faster than I would ever be able to do any of this stuff on my own. So it's going through and it's changing these input fields, and it's placing the orders. It's noticing that there's an error. It's filling out the field, then placing the order again, and making sure that the value was there as expected. And then it also does a screenshot comparison. This is also particularly useful for anyone who has websites that are updating plugins or themes and things like that, and you want to make sure that the layout's not going to get completely blown out when you update any of these plugins or themes. So you can click on this, and you can take a look at the layout here after the test was run, and looks like everything is this as it should be, looking good there. And that makes your life a whole lot easier. So if, for example, if you have an e-commerce site that also has a contact form and maybe has some other lead generation forms or things like that, you may want to test these things before you actually update the live site. But it's also a pain to have to test these things all the time, to manually test these things, I should say, all the time. So using a automated tester like Ghost Inspector allows you to set up these tests in advance with a site that's working the way you know it should be working. And then it lets you run these tests locally on a development site, so that way you don't have to go through and manually go through each of these steps and remember each of these steps that you have to do for every single different permutation, whether it's all the different client sites that you have and all the different critical elements on each client site that needs to be tested every single time that there's an update. You don't want to have to do that all manually. Using a tool like Ghost Inspector lets you do that all pretty much automated. You can set a schedule for some of these tests. So if you click on set a schedule, you can set it to test daily or hourly or every so often. I'm not doing that in this case. The reason why is when you use the free version of Ngrok, it creates a temporary URL. So this number here before the ngrok.io, that's temporary. So if I was to go back to here and I close out of the Ngrok on my local site, and then I come back and I click Start again, it's going to come up with a different URL here for me to test against. Now the downside to that is anytime I want to run these automated tests on Ghost Inspector, you can see that it's using the old URL right now. So if I was to go and run this test again, it's going to fail. So I'm going to click Run Test, and it's going to fail basically right away because it's trying to access this old version of the site, and the old version of the site doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to have to replace it with this new version. Actually, I'm going to cancel this test run for now because this start URL might still actually be active, so it's not going to show you exactly what I was saying. But in the future, after I close out of everything and I come back, maybe a week later or 2 weeks later or whatever, and I want to run these tests again, I'm going to have to replace this URL with the new URL that is generated for me. And so that's one of the downsides to using the free version of Ngrok, but there is a paid version for Ngrok that allows you to have your own custom domain. So that way, the custom subdomains. And so you can have your own mytestsite.ngrok.com, and that will never change as long as you're still on their paid plans. The free plan, you get what you get in terms of the subdomain. So as long as you're okay with changing this starting URL every single time that you want to run these tests, free is just fine. If it's something that you want to be more permanent, then you might have to fork over the, whatever it is, the $5 a month in order to use a more static domain that way. But it's a really great way to automate your testing. It allows you to do everything locally, and then you can open up the local host to the world, for testing on a temporary basis. Now, the other benefit to this is that sometimes you just may not want to have your changes that you're making live to the world, on a subdomain or some other live publicly available domain for extended periods of time. For the 5 minutes it takes to run a test may not be that big of a problem. And the other benefit to having a constantly changing URL is that it provides a little bit more anonymity in terms of, like if someone was to stumble across this URL at some point and realize that there's a website there, as soon as I close that connection, then that website's not going to be there anymore. So it helps me not have my work all exposed, to the world all the time on a 24/7 kind of basis, the way a live website would be maybe on a subdomain or something like that. So this helps in that regards. I think it's a really neat tool. I think it's going to help me out, and hopefully it'll help you out as well.